Good evening, everyone. I'm Jay Barth. Welcome to the Clinton Presidential Center. We are thrilled that y'all fought through whatever storms were going on to come this evening for another Clinton Presidential Center Presents event. In addition to being Bill Clinton's neighbor as a teenager and friend over numerous decades, Carolyn Staley is a public servant, pastor, musician, and writer. She has led both federal and state government agencies, both under the Clinton administration as well as around Arkansas. She chaired the inaugural dedication services for Governor Clinton in 1987 and 1991, as well as the 1992 inaugural prayer service for President Bill Clinton. From 1994 to 2004, she worked with President Clinton as Deputy Director of the National Institute for Literacy in Washington. She served as the Director of the Governor's Commission on Adult Literacy, Director of State Services for the Arkansas Arts Center, and Director of the Arkansas Arts Council. She ran for Arkansas State Representative in 2010. And we are thrilled that she chose to join us here at the Clinton Center during the month of the publication of her first book, The Boy Next Door, which recounts their 60-year friendship beginning as teenagers in Hot Springs. Of course, today is also the birthday of the subject of the book, as President Bill Clinton turned 79 today. After tonight's event, books will be available for sale, and Carolyn, of course, will be available to sign your book. Moderating the conversation with Carolyn is Janis Kearney. Janis is an author, book publisher, and literary coach. And after years in public affairs and publishing in Arkansas, Janis went to Washington to be a part of the Clinton administration as well. From 1993 to 2001, Janis served in the administration, working briefly in the White House Media Affairs Office before being appointed by President Clinton as Director of Communications for the U.S. Small Business Administration. In 1995, she was selected by President Clinton as the first ever personal diarist to a president. She served in that role through June 2001. Let's welcome Carolyn Staley and Janis Kearney to the stage.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Bart, for that wonderful introduction to both of us. I want to start off by saying, I want to start out by saying happy birthday to our former president, William Jefferson Clinton. I want to thank the Clinton Presidential Center and the Foundation for this invitation. It's an honor to participate in this conversation. I cannot wait to hear more about The Boy Next Door. And I want to start out by asking Carolyn a question. You and Bill Clinton met as teenagers in Hot Springs 60 years ago. Would you take us back to that time and share about first meeting Bill Clinton?
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for coming. We're just overwhelmed by your support and friendship. Thank you. And to all the staff and volunteers, too. Yes, I moved to Hot Springs with my sisters who are here and my brother. And our father was pastor at Second Baptist Church in Hot Springs. And as luck would have it, we moved there as I was entering high school, and that's really a tough time. I was going into 10th grade and didn't know a soul. And I had run for student council in West Memphis, where we lived, and I had been accompanist for the choir, and I wanted to continue to do those things, but I had no platform or no support group. So I started asking around, who do I need to know? And Bill Clinton's name came up all the time. Well, you both like music, and you both are interested in student government. You really do need to know Bill Clinton. We didn't have any classes together the first year because he was in the band rotation and I was in choir rotation, and that meant our classes were planned around those extracurriculars. And but I had seen him and I knew who he was. I was in geometry class about to go in, and I was at a water fountain, and I talk about this in the book a little bit, and I saw him and he looked at me and he said, "And she's going to be my next door neighbor." He was talking to a friend, "And she's going to be my next door neighbor." And I thought, right then I thought, oh boy, this is a game changer. What's going to come from this? And he moved in that summer. A new house had been built next door, and he moved in. And our family must have been on vacation. I don't know where we were visiting grandparents, but the Clintons moved in, and he knocked on the door one afternoon and said, "Hi, I'm Bill Clinton. I'm your new neighbor, and I need an accompanist for my saxophone solos, and I wonder if you'd do that." He had heard me play for the choir, and we had a 350 voice choir. It was amazing at Hot Springs High School. And anyway, I said, sure, I'll be happy to. And I was a little reticent because I had never accompanied a soloist, an instrumental soloist before. So I was delighted, though, that he asked me to do that. And the rest is history. It truly is. He just brought his horn over. Next door, I had the piano. And after we practiced his music, then we would sit side by side on the piano bench, and he would play by ear. We would just come up with something we wanted to play, Summertime or Green, Green Grass of Home or whatever. My mother would come in and sing along with us, and he had never taken piano lessons, but he liked picking songs out. And then we would just talk about things, and then he asked me if I wanted to ride to school with him. He got his driver's license, and I gave him $2 a week for gas, and we rode to school together, and it was just wonderful. And lots of times, just no talking, nothing at all, just friendship. You know, that friendship bond where you don't have to say a word, and you just share. We both loved student government, and we believed the same things fundamentally about justice and life, and we talked about those things, and we just bonded.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So, Carolyn, while much of the interest in your book is because your main character is America's 42nd president, your book also affords us a new, fresh look at a young Bill Clinton. But truthfully, you were and are so important to this book as well. You are an extraordinary woman who has traveled and achieved much in your life, including being a mother to two amazing young people. I was struck by how many similarities there are between you and Bill Clinton. Can you talk some about what drew you two together? What cemented your friendship? And how were the two of you alike? And how were you different?
Well, being a Baptist preacher's daughter and him being the mother of one of Oaklawn's finest fans, we had very little in common in terms of our, church going. And he had grown up going to Park Place Baptist Church and walked himself there every Sunday morning. And Patty remembers seeing him carrying his Bible, and he just found his way to church and was baptized. And but it was, I think, the fact that we both were very active in student government, and we saw it as an opportunity to serve. We had a high school principal, Johnny May Mackey, who taught us that politics was a high calling, and that it was akin to being a doctor or a minister or a lawyer or a teacher or a parent. It was something you could do for your community, and that more people were needed in government. So she encouraged our class to get involved in public service. So we shared that. And of course, music. We shared music. And he had flirted with the idea of maybe being a musician, and I think was offered a music scholarship from LSU. But then came Boys Nation and Girls Nation, and that sort of threw a curveball in. So he really discovered the joy and the pull on his life of politics and public service. So, but our lives were different. Our mothers became best friends, but my mother would see Virginia go into the racetrack, and she'd say, "You're not going to that old racetrack, are you, Virginia?" Virginia'd say, "Kay, let's just call it a fellowship, and we'll all just, we'll be fine." But very different backgrounds, but so bonded in our lives. Yeah.
And you mentioned humor. That was a big part of you all's relationship, and I think it continues to be. What I'd love for you to do is share with the audience any memories that you have. I think he was a jokester. He played jokes on you all sometimes. Some of the fun times that you all had together.
Yeah, David Leopoulos, sitting right here on the second row, is responsible for a lot of the humor. But he and I hid in the closet when Bill was at Georgetown and coming home for freshman year Christmas, and had such a good time surprising him. We put up a big banner and said, "Welcome home," and hid in a closet. And he walked in and was yelling, "Where are they? Where are they?" And we just fell into each other's arms and convulsed in laughter. But he was the good audience for jokes. I don't remember him being so much humorous, although the sandwiches he made for after-school snacks were humorous and mile high. But imagine putting salami and peanut butter on the same sandwich, and cheese. But anyway, he loved, David was always just, he would say, he would call me, and Bill just wanted us around. And David called me one time and he said, "Bill called and wants me to come over. Do you want to go over and watch him read?" So that was like a pastime. We'd just go and do nothing together, just sit in the same room and be together, and that's all that mattered.
Wonderful. But long before the White House, you and Bill Clinton were already leaders when you were very young leaders. Leading was very important to both of you. I sense in reading your book that there was quite a bit of competition along with the friendship. Such is the time you both ran for a student council position, and you won. And the leadership roles you each played in Girls and Boys Nation when he met President John F. Kennedy. How deeply do you believe those early experiences and opportunities to lead played in both of your future lives?
Well, there's no question that when we went to, first of all, to get selected for Girls State, who's been to Girls State? Yeah, lots of Girls Staters in here. And Boys State, who's been to Boys State? It was a big honor to be selected, and I really wanted to go. And I felt new in the student body, and I wasn't sure. You were selected by your teachers. And so I was so glad to be selected. And then the girls who were going said, "We're going to run you for governor." And they made the campaign materials, and we had a good time with that. And Bill had been at Boys State the week before and came home and had been selected to go to Boys Nation. And there were 2 boys selected from each state to represent the Senate. And so at Girls State, I was selected to go to Girls Nation. And so there we were, 2 senators, 2 boys, 2 girls, and 2 of us next door neighbors, which was really phenomenal. And Virginia, Bill's mother, talks about how she talked often about how that was a turning point in his life. meeting JFK and shaking his hand and being able to stand in the Rose Garden and walk the halls of Congress. And I remember riding the elevator with Lyndon Johnson. I spent the day with Hubert Humphrey. I was Everett Dirksen's counterpart. I was elected to be minority leader of the Senate. And it was, Girls Nation and Boys Nation was an invitation to please carefully consider election to government at the federal level. And we want to roll out the red carpet for you. So that's what they did. And it worked. In his case, it was phenomenal. And then I remember going to, he invited me one time to visit at Georgetown and just to see the campus and look around. And I remember when he was in class, I would go to the Capitol. And I remember walking through the Statuary Hall and saying, Bill's statue's gonna be right there. And seeing the furniture, and I said, now Jackie's done a wonderful job with all the French furnishings, but Bill's gonna put in American antiques. And I just envisioned it all. And of course, he hadn't talked about it, and nobody ever had talked about him being president. But I think if we ask any of my high school classmates, we saw that he had that potential. And it crossed our mind, I think, more than once that this man could be anything he wants to be.
Amen.
But I beat him for class secretary. And we had a point system that our principal, she was really phenomenal. She installed a point system so that the same people didn't get all the leadership jobs. And so Bill was band major, and he was this, that, and the other, and he had run out of points, and the only thing he could run for was class secretary. Well, I had been class secretary the year before, plus secretary is a girl, right? I don't know whether that worked in my favor or not, but out in the hallway for the runoff, he looked at me and he said, so help me, if you beat me for this, I'm never gonna forget it. And I thought, my goodness, is he serious? I mean, this is senior class secretary, but I don't know. I still haven't gotten him to tell me whether he was serious, but I don't think he has forgotten it.
Now, you mentioned you were a preacher's kid, a PK, growing up in Hot Springs, Arkansas, which is a bit ironic, but family was central to your life. How did the Yeldale household differ from the Clinton household? You wrote that you were in awe of Miss Virginia, Bill Clinton's mother, describing her as this very exotic woman who was so different from other mothers in the community. Tell us a little bit about the difference between your household and the Clinton household.
Well, most of us didn't have working mothers at that time. Most mothers stayed in the home and were homemakers and moms. And Virginia already was outside that mold. She got up every morning and put on her nurse uniform. It was not scrubs, it was a white starched uniform, and went to work. And Bill often got Roger off to school. And so that was different. My mother was a homemaker, and my job was to keep every rung of every chair polished and dusted so that if any church member came to visit us, unexpected, we were ready. And Virginia loved the racetrack, as I've already said. My dad was a pastor, and he worked in the yard. She worked in the yard in her tube top. And my father was on one side of the hedge, trimming the hedge, and she was on the other side, trimming her roses, and they would just have the best conversation. And he said the first sign of spring is not a robin, it is Virginia in her tube top out in the yard. And I do think that, we found out later about the difficulties that the family had. Virginia and Roger had divorced, and that there was some addiction issues and some violence that Bill and Roger witnessed. But thankfully, that all reconciled and settled down, and Bill and his dad were good friends. all the way to the end. But there were some tough times, and my family didn't have those particular experiences, but we were all close friends.
Absolutely. So after college, you moved away, you got married, and you moved away to Chicago. But at the urging of Bill Clinton, you moved back to Arkansas. Tell me about that decision and why you felt it was important for you to move back.
Well, we had stayed in touch the whole time. My husband got his first job. We went to Indiana University, and he got his job outside Chicago in Valparaiso in Chesterton, Indiana. And we stayed in touch as Bill was elected Attorney General. And then when he was elected governor, he called and he said, I always thought if I did something good with my life, you might come home and be a part of it. So I'd like you to do that. And could we be neighbors again? Wasn't that nice? And so my husband was all for it. It didn't hurt a bit that it had snowed in one of the worst winters of Indiana history. That lake effect snow was so awful off of Lake Michigan. And so we loaded everything up and moved to Little Rock, found a house in the Quapaw Quarter, and my husband took on the task of redoing every room. But Bill and Hillary would stop by and see me with soot covering my face. My sister Linda came and helped me try to get the house cleaned up before the family moved in. And it was a mess, and the family had not. The woman who lived there was an original homeowner, and she was 98 or so, and she said, I haven't been upstairs for 25 years. And, wallpaper was just weeping off the walls. But Bill and Hillary would stop by to cheer me on, and we really enjoyed being neighbors. And I was so glad, especially Election Day, 92, that we were neighbors, that they could walk right over from the governor's mansion and join us for brunch that morning. That's in one of these pictures on the front porch.
Wow, exciting.
It was.
Many of us Arkansans recall vividly when the Clintons, Governor Bill Clinton and First Lady Hillary Clinton, became parents. In a way, I think many Arkansans felt especially close to Chelsea as a child. As someone so close to him, can you tell us what fatherhood meant to Bill Clinton? And are there any memories from that time in his life?
I remember him telling the state trooper, oh, this baby's on the way. We've got to get to the hospital. Bill and Hillary had done childbirth classes together, and so he was expecting to be there and was out on the road somewhere. And anyway, he was there for her birth, but he was just stunned, at the marvel of this new life, and loved to hold her. He was a very hands-on dad. One of the funny stories about him, Hillary told this, when she started to roll, at how many, 4 months, 5 months, and she was on the bed, and Bill said, watch this. She knows where the edge of the bed is. Watch this. And she started rolling, and she rolled off onto the floor. And luckily there were pillows, and she didn't land and hurt herself. But he thought that there was something unusual about Chelsea, that she knew, smart enough to know where the edge of the bed was. Sarah and Mary, our daughters, babysat for her. And sometimes I did. And when Bill would come home, if she wasn't in bed yet, they got down on their knees by the bed and had a prayer. She was their heartthrob. They hated to see her. It was really kind of funny in a sad way. When she went away to camp for the first time, I didn't know if they were going to live through it. But she went to German camp in Michigan, and anyway, they were very doting. He tried never to miss any recitals or any special events. He helped her with algebra on the road, famous stories about that. But they're extraordinarily proud of her. I love the story of Hillary. Chelsea, I think I wrote about this in the book. Chelsea told her mother, I think I want to shave my head and dye my hair green, just a little stubble of it, and maybe leave half of it on and half of it shaved. Hillary said, go ahead, it's your head. Well, that took all the fun away. Chelsea didn't do it.
The Boy Next Door centers around a long and enduring friendship that has lasted through life's ups and downs. 60 years. Were there ebbs and flows in your friendship based on what was going on in each of your lives? And secondly, how has William Jefferson Clinton changed as a friend and as a human being over these last 60 years? And how have you changed?
The ebbs and flows, mostly it's been a constant stream. There was a time that I felt some distance, and it was during the draft issues around the Vietnam War. We had lost 4 classmates. The nightly news was body bag counts. You remember that, those of you who were alive then. We were opposed. Nobody knew what we were doing there. We weren't sure, even as a nation, why we were there. And Bill knew that his odds of going there and coming home were 50-50, probably at best. And he really did want to serve this country. And so he wasn't thinking, well, I'm too good to go. Phil went and flew a Huey, and you know, we just had a lot of classmates who served honorably and came home. But he struggled with that time, and so he was distant. So that was an ebb. And other than that, I don't really remember any time that I felt that we weren't talking enough, but that was a time that he was in his lonesome valley and just had to go through it by himself. I don't know that he's changed much from my high school friend to the man he is today. I don't really think he has. I think he's been who he's been since he was a young man who was a young adult. I never knew Bill Clinton to be anything but grown up. He had adult responsibilities in caring for Roger. His mother spoke to him as an adult. Hillary and Bill spoke to Chelsea as an adult. I always observed that. Chelsea was going for her immunizations or her inoculations. She never got shots, you know. They used the big words. So I just remember that Bill was my friend then, and that I still see him the same way as I think about it. As I did in high school, I look at him and I call him Mr. President, and because I honor him and his service and the job, but the person he is, I don't think has changed. And I don't know, I think I have, Philip Martin's article touched on that a little bit. Can you imagine, people here my age, that we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, we didn't have any of that technology. If we were going to be in touch, it was through a letter, or maybe a payphone, or you would set a time up and you'd say, I'm going to call you at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and you'd be there. Even when my husband and I were dating and I was a singing waitress on Cape Cod, I knew where the payphone was that I would be at on Saturday afternoon when he'd call, and how many quarters I needed to put in, you know, to have that phone call. So a lot has changed in our lives. For women, enormous changes in life. And for racial justice, I hope to think that we've made lots of progress, that the ground is equal more than it was when we were growing up. But otherwise, I think we're pretty much just the same old people.
And that's a good thing. From youth leader to musician to pastor to public servant, you've lived an amazing life, and one to a great extent in service to others. You also spent a number of years in a leadership role during the Clinton administration. How did your journey before that moment help define your time inside the Clinton administration, working under the leadership of your childhood friend? Are there any memories from that time that stands out?
Well, I was so honored when he was governor that he did invite me to take the role of the director of the Arkansas Arts Council. It was a job that wedded and brought together my interest in the arts and also my interest in government. So it was perfect. And so I enjoyed serving him there. And then I went to the Arkansas Arts Center and served for touring programs and directed that. And then the office, Barbara Bush, started the National Institute for Literacy and the family literacy programs around the country, and a place where children and parents could come together, parents for an adult education class and the children to a Head Start class in the same school. And the National Institute for Literacy was formed, but the Governor's Commission on Adult Literacy was an umbrella of the private literacy councils and the state adult education programs. And I was really enamored with that and saw that as a job I'd like to try, and took a step aside from the arts. I applied for it, and I thought I had done a competitive job. He was running, Bill was jogging by our house one morning, and I went out and I said, listen, I've applied for this job at the Governor's Commission on Adult Literacy. Could you put in a good word for me with the board? And you know what he said? Let's just see how it works out. That's not the answer a friend gives, is it? Let's just see how it works out. But you know what he was doing? He wanted to see if I could, he felt like I was going to get it on my own merits and that I didn't need to go through him and his name. And he wanted me to have that confidence. And so I appreciate that a lot. I did move to DC, our family did, and I took the job of the deputy director of the National Institute for Literacy. And I was so honored. Carol Rasco headed the America Reads program, and that was for children. But Bill Clinton, our president, saw an equal value in adult education. Adult education, for those of you who don't know, is for to encourage people who have dropped out of school at 15 or 16. You can elect to leave school when you are 15 or 16 in the state of Arkansas. And it's to encourage people to get back into school, to get their GED. A GED holds more weight sometimes with businesses because you have to pass a test to get your GED. But anyway, to encourage people to get out of those dead-end jobs and to be able to make good decisions and support their children and families. So it was a very worthwhile job, and he always welcomed the adult education community to come to the White House and was always patting them on the back.
Wonderful, wonderful. You mentioned that you all grew up without you couldn't text and you couldn't phone.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. So how do you stay in touch with him now?
We text and we phone. We email some. He used to write notes. He's not, now he texts more. Sometimes if the phone rings and it says private caller, I know it's Bill Clinton. And but I do have his phone number, but I can't give it to you. But I have his phone number, and I can text him or his staff, and we stay in touch that way. And then when he's here in town, often if he has an overnight, he'll call and say, let's get together. And he'll call some friends together for supper and just visiting. Just nothing at all, but just visiting.
It's wonderful, wonderful. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's read The Boy Next Door, we realize that this is kind of a coming-of-age story about Carolyn Staley as much as it is about William J. Clinton. Tell us what you would like readers to take away from reading The Boy Next Door.
Janis, I think the thing that has broken my heart the most about seeing Bill Clinton in public office is how misunderstood he is and how the press and the media portray him. And I know a lot of it is his own responsibility. But when you're in high office, you didn't get there by accident. You put yourself forward. It takes a lot to step forward and say, I will run for office. And I hope anybody in this room who would consider it, especially if you're a Democrat, would consider running for office, because we need good candidates. And it is a high calling. I still believe that. So I just think that that's the most important thing, that I would hope that readers will understand, that this is a regular guy who is a friend to the last dying breath for people that he has known and loved through his life, and for new friends. He makes new friends every day. And I want people to know that I believe he's a person of faith. He's a person of his word. He is a person of integrity. His heart is for service. His heart is for the marginalized, and I really mean that. He has said so many times, it's hard to say you're a Christian or a person of faith, whether Judeo-Christian or Muslim, it's hard to say that you have a God and still accept that it's okay for them to be hungry, homeless, naked, in prison, not cared for. That's a non-starter for him.
Amen. We have a few questions from the public, and I will ask them. How did public education help shape President Clinton's life?
I remember when we were in high school that he came home. Well, we were freshmen, home from Christmas vacation, for Christmas vacation. And we were just sitting around in my den or his living room and talking, and he said, I've seen now what education means. Children are born children wherever they're born. We're all babies. We come into the world, and what's different is the opportunities that we have. What's different is the schools that we have to attend, and the health care we have access to. And he believed then and there that education needed to be as good as it could possibly be for every child in this country, and that it's the great levelizer. And that if you have a good education and health care, and you could just about be anything you wanted to be. So I think it's very important. He did go to private kindergarten, but we were talking just before the program. Jay was saying he went to kindergarten, and public kindergarten in the 70s, I think. And I read that Arkansas had it for across the board in 82. We had public kindergartens, but it wasn't even required across the country until 2011. Can you believe that? But anyway, Head Start was 1965, but you had to be income qualified. But anyway, public education has meant everything to Bill Clinton, and it still does.
Wonderful. What are some of the core aspects of his childhood you still see in him today?
Oh, just the friendship, the kindness. Phil and I, Jameson is here from high school, lives in D.C. or Maryland. And we were invited one time. He included us in things that we had no idea why we were there. One time, he invited us to a birthday party, and it was at the White House swimming pool. I still couldn't get there today if I don't know really where it is. But the people on the guest list were the cabinet and his top donors. And Phil and Jim French and I looked at each other and said, what are we doing here? He just wanted us to be there. Another time, we were at a Christmas tree lighting ceremony, and everybody had left, and our families were out, still sitting in our chairs. And Bill was up on the stage about where the windows are, and he said, Carolyn, Jim, Phil. I mean, this is the President of the United States, spotting friends out on the lawn in chairs, and he had just left Aretha Franklin or, I don't know, up on the stage helping him light but it was seeing his old friends. So I just think that that's the most enduring thing I can imagine. And he wants us there with him. It gives him maybe a touchstone to the past and to who he is, I hope.
How do you, I think that one is a lot like the last one. Let me just ask you this. Why did you decide to write this book?
When we lived in D.C., I didn't think about writing a book very much, but in D.C., power is everything. And proximity to power is everything. I didn't have a single picture of Bill Clinton on my wall in the office or at home. And a friend of ours at church said, oh no, this is about to change. You have to have a power wall. And she took some photos and had them beautifully framed and matted and hung them in prominent places in our home. And now they're back down the hallway toward the bedroom. But I just had friends who came up to me in D.C. and said, you have to write a book. You know more about him and his history and his background than anybody else that we know. It's not the Senate or the Congress, it's not the cabinet who know him, it's his old friends. You've got to write a book. And so I thought about it, and it actually weighed on me. It was kind of a burden because I felt that voice saying, right. And then COVID hit. And what did we all have time to do? Anything we wanted to. And I just sat down at my computer, and I just would work a couple of hours a day and write memories. And then Ted Parkhurst, my publisher who's here with August House, our publishers, Parkhurst Publishers, told me that I had to cut about half of it. But anyway, I just said I have to put all this down on paper and help the world know more about him. So that was my goal. I just wanted to share another side of him that I didn't feel had been told.
You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for sharing this story.
Buy the book, buy the book.
And before we leave the stage, Carolyn has a special treat for us. Oh. And you can give the background of it.
Well, in the book, I write about when Chelsea was born, and I showed up at the governor's mansion. My husband, Jerry, I wish he could be here, but he's handicapped, so he's home and cheering us on, and he'll watch this on the video. He brought to the hospital a bud vase with a tiny pink rose and 2 long stem red roses to symbolize our family when Sarah was born. And I said, well, I will just do that for Bill and Hillary and Chelsea. I got that arrangement, and I walked into the mansion kitchen, and I was overwhelmed by the greenhouse full of long stem red roses from every potentate in the world. And there I stood with this little bud vase, and I said, I can't not leave it. They'll never even see it. What can I do? And so I said, I have read it before. Rings and gifts are excuses. Rings and jewelry are excuses for gifts. The best gift is the gift of yourself. And I thought, I'm going to write a song. And so I went home, and it just came so quickly. It was the International Year of the Child, UNESCO. It was, we're the wonder state, we're the natural state. And so I put all those themes together, and the song was for Chelsea, You're a Natural Wonder to me. And so I'm going to sing that for you tonight. I was so glad when he said it was the best gift he received. It made me happy. That's me. We welcome you, Chelsea, to our great big world. Welcome with love and with pleasure. We've already had so much joy in our lives, but your life's a new gift we treasure. We tried to get ready, we tried to prepare. One day you're a dream, and the next day you're there, looking at us with your beautiful eyes. And we feel that we're not worthy, and we hope we'll be wise. 'Cause child, you're a natural joy, full of natural laughter. Your tears are natural too, and I'll wipe them dry after. Your days are so young and so free, full of promise of what you will be. And child, you're a natural wonder to me. You'll find lots of things are important in life, some more important than others. But one of those things stands above all the rest, and it's living as sisters and brothers. Your life's a book, and the pages are clean. There's so much to do, there's so much to be seen, and it has to be wonderful, it has to be good, and we'll try to lead you in the way that we should. 'Cause child, you're a natural joy, full of natural laughter. Your tears are natural too, and I'll wipe them dry after. Your days are so young and so free, full of promise of what you will be. And child, you're a natural wonder to me. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. music the bond in our friendship. I just had to have a little music.
For writing this book, and of course, Carolyn is going to be available outside to sign books. And Janis, thank you as always for sharing your gifts as an interviewer.